We woke up very early this morning and for a very specific reason. We are going for a ride on the dead railway. And that is not the railway who died, but actually the railway of the dead.
We are Nick and Linz. For the last 5 years, we have been traveling to some of the most amazing nature places on the planet. And now we embarked on an epic journey to experience naturism in every continent of the world. Subscribe and travel along with us. Right now, we are in Asia. The story we're about to tell you is not a happy one. We're taking you back in time to the early 1940s. The Germans started invading other parts of Europe, and on the other side of the world, the Japanese were occupying most of Southeast Asia. The next step on the Japanese plan was to attack India, but to be able to do so, they needed a land connection to provide weapons and supplies. So they started building the Thailand-Burma Railroad. Well, they didn't build it themselves. They had a huge number of local laborers and war prisoners who were basically treated as slaves. Only a couple of years later, the construction of this railroad will have cost the lives of more than 100,000 people. This is why today it's nicknamed the Dead Railway.
Riding a train like this is always a little bit double. On one hand, you wonder if it's okay to do this for fun or for tourist purposes, given its history. But on the other hand, it's also a way to keep the memory alive. If nobody would ride this train anymore, then maybe it would seem like it was all for nothing. Anyway, we are in Kanchanaburi. It's supposed to be the epicenter of everything that happened here. There are supposed to be lots of remnants, and we are going to find out as much as we can. But first, we need a place to sleep. We got ourselves this wooden bungalow. It's not that much on itself, it's quite basic. But the cool part about this place is not inside, it's outside. We are right at the banks of the River Kwai. If that name sounds familiar, that's very possible because there's a famous movie called The Bridge Over the River Kwai. And that particular bridge is just around the corner of here. Somewhere along the way we switched from regular coffee to iced coffee. I'm not really sure why. I think
Because it's just too hot?
I think it's probably the heat, yeah. It's incredibly hot here in Thailand. I mean, yeah, we still haven't adjusted 100%.
No.
And iced coffee does help. This is the famous bridge over the River Kwai. At first I thought it was only famous because they wrote a book about it and because they made a movie about it. But actually it has been a very strategic point during the Second World War. And that is because it's an iron bridge. And there were only a few iron bridges. There were about 600 wooden bridges, but only 7 or so iron bridges. And it's the only way to get across the river. There's no other way, there's no alternative route. So, and the Allies obviously knew that, so they kept bombing this bridge.
It feels a bit weird to be walking on these train tracks, especially because the train still drives here and goes through this place. In Belgium and in Europe, that would definitely not be possible at all.
They do have these little platforms, so when a train does pass by, people who happen to be on the bridge can stand on the side and wait for the train to pass by.
I don't know if walking on this bridge is the safest way to cross the river. Okay, that's also the only way if you don't want to take a boat. But a lot of these plates don't have screws anymore. And some of them make a funny noise.
Today this bridge is probably the most popular tourist attraction in the area. There are even buses coming from Bangkok on day trips just to look at the bridge over the River Kwai. And this makes it a little bit difficult, also with the shops and everything to do around it, makes it a little bit difficult to grasp the sentiment of this place. But you have to try to imagine. The Japanese had conquered pretty much all of Southeast Asia, and they wanted to attack India, and they needed supplies and weapons going in that direction. The sea was obviously a little bit dangerous and way too far, so they wanted a land line. And that's why they started building this railway track all the way from Thailand into Myanmar, which was back in the day was called Burma. And they needed people for that, so they searched for cheap laborers from all over Southeast Asia, which were treated basically as slaves. And also the prisoners of war were used to build these tracks in the most horrible circumstances. And like these bridges, it must have taken forever back in World War II to build a bridge like this. And then the Allies got word of it, that they were building bridges over rivers. So they started bombing these places. Like, you got to try to imagine planes flying over and dropping bombs, and then just more slaves and more prisoners were sent in to restore the bridge. It has been restored a couple of times. And like today, only the very outskirts of the bridge, like the outer points, are still original from back in times of World War II. All the other parts have been restored throughout the time, because now this railway road is still used to bring people and tourists from one place to another. By the way, it wasn't only trains that were going on these tracks. The Japanese also had a very genius system of trucks that drove towards the train tracks, and then when they arrived, they just changed the wheels into wheels that go on a train track. So they could move the trucks on the train tracks. And one truck could take something like 4 wagons or something. So it wasn't like a locomotive of a real train, but at least it did something. And here's an interesting fact about this river. It's not really pronounced the River Kwai. It's pronounced the River Kwai with a "eh" sound, as in square.
I have the feeling that you're very impressed by the bridge.
It's interesting history. You may notice, well, I hope that you noticed that we did quite a lot of research about this place. And that is not just to be able to tell a coherent story, but also because this is an interesting piece of history for us. You see, as Europeans, when we hear about the Second World War, we automatically think about the German invasion of Europe. Those are the stories we hear in school and from our grandparents about how the Germans occupied Belgium and how the British and the Americans saved us. And it's so much that we often don't realize that tragedies were happening all around the world. For example, here in Thailand. And to give you an idea of the size of this tragedy, I know another place. This is just one of the many war cemeteries around Kanchanaburi. And what makes this place interesting, well, I don't know if interesting is the right word, but I do find it interesting, is that there's not a single Thai person on the cemetery. And everybody who lays here is a war victim, but not in the sense that they have been killed by bullets or by bombs or anything. Everybody here died during the construction of the railway. It's weird to be looking at the names of these graves. This could perfectly be a cemetery in Belgium. There's Gerrits, there's Van den Berg, there's De Groot, Roeleveld, Ruben. Those are all names that could have been Belgium. They're all Dutch soldiers, but could have been Belgium. It feels like I'm in a cemetery in Belgium, knowing that I'm in Thailand. By the way, if you're wondering where we did our research, partially on the internet of course, but yesterday we visited this place here behind me. That's the Museum and Research Center about that railway. It has lots of interesting information. If you're also coming this way, if you're in Kanchanaburi, this is definitely recommended to visit, just to have an idea of everything that happened here. And it will tell you a little bit more than what we tell you in this video. Eventually, the construction of this railway would cost the life to more than 100,000 laborers, of whom there were 90,000 local laborers and about 15,000 war prisoners. You may be wondering, just like we were a couple of days ago, how so many people can die during construction of a railway. And it's partially malnutrition, partially very bad work circumstances. They didn't get any food, they didn't get any medicine, they hardly ever got new clothes. And also, like here in Kanchanaburi, it's mostly flat. This must have been quite an easy part to put railway tracks. But other parts are very mountainous, and that's something we're gonna see tomorrow. This is a completely different landscape to build a train line, and you have to imagine that there were no big machines, like no cranes, no bulldozers or anything. Everything here had to be made with hand tools, which also was quite a shortage. And another shortage that the Japanese had was time. Like the war was going on, they had to be fast, they had to get to India as quick as possible. But what they did have was an unlimited number of people, workers, yeah, almost slaves, prisoners, who could build this train line. So basically they just sent lots and lots and lots of people here and treated them as slaves and made them work 20 hours, 18 hours, 20 hours a day, just digging with nothing more than hand tools.
It must have been almost impossible to get through these rocks.
This part of the Death Railway is called the Hellfire Pass, and it has been nicknamed like this by the prisoners and the laborers who were working here, because it was just so hard and so difficult to dig the railway in this place. You have to look at all these rocks around me, and the only thing they had to dig was a hammer and a tap, so it must have taken forever. Today the Hellfire Pass is not part of the Thai railway system anymore. It's mostly a memorial and a visitor center to keep the memory alive. And it's very well organized. For one, it's free, which we like a lot. And also they gave us a free audio guide and a walkie-talkie, because maybe we could get lost, and then every hour or so we have to check up with the reception that we are still alive and still know where we are, which is really cool.
Okay, the walkie-talkie maybe is not such a bad idea. There used to be a 200-meter bridge over here. I just heard it on the audio radio. And honestly, it's so fucking hot already. I can't even imagine just working here. It's unbelievable.
And this is just dry heat. You don't want to know what it is to be here in rain season when it's hot and humid. By the way, there's lots of other stuff to do around Kanchanaburi. There's the river, there are 2 national parks, there's obviously the food, and there's waterfalls, there's so much more. Yeah. But we figured that there are probably other people out there who also don't really know about the history of this place, just like us. Yeah. So we figured that this was probably an interesting story to tell. If you also found this an interesting story, let us know in the comments. And of course, we dig deeper into Thailand, but that's gonna be for our next video. So if you don't want to miss that,
make sure to subscribe to our channel, put on your notifications, and if you like this video, please give us a big fat thumbs up and let us know if you like this video in the comments, and we just see you in our next one. Bye!